My biggest takeaway is this conference was batshit crazy today. That's that's my biggest takeaway. But I mean, you look at the two ends of the spectrum. Like we can work our way back into who I think we're high on, but right now, Iowa State and Kansas, those were two that were just really alarming today, and I think for different reasons. I think if you were going to ask me like who I'm more concerned about, see Iowa State. This was spillover from the Arizona game because in OT they got absolutely manhandled by Arizona. Getting their ball taken in gaps, and that's not what you typically see from a TJ Otzelberger team and from Iowa State in general with the toughness that they show night in and night out. And then Kansas to wilt like they did today. To me, I felt like that was more of a tactical error than it was just kind of an overarching thing for Kansas. I mean, they subbed out Flory Badunga with 17:30 left in the second half. And what I've seen from them is when things go awry, their comfort zone is Dickinson, Adams, Mayo, Harris. That's their comfort zone. And how I know that is they kept those guys in for 14 straight minutes from the 17 and a half mark to the 3-minute mark. And those dudes were gassed. And Baylor, like, they kept their foot on the gas and were able to almost kind of run them out of the gym. It was wild. And it's not the first time we've seen it from Kansas. So the concern is there's concern there for both of those teams for sure. And we can obviously get to who we're excited about, but I'll start with those two because they lost in ways like I think so much of Bill Self as a coach. I think there's a lot of loyalty that he has to guys right now that may be clouding his judgment with what type of rotations. And I'll say this, Bill Self's won a lot more games than I've won. I'll just make that abundantly clear. But even for Iowa State too, like just uncharacteristic on both sides for those teams. And in a Big 12 race that after Houston losing tonight is really heating up.
Yeah, Goodman, let's stick with Kansas here for a second because they were outscored by 30 in the second half. They gave up 60 in the second half. They blew a 19-point lead. Baylor went on a 21-6 run to open the half, and then on a different 17-0 run in the last 7 minutes to be able to turn a 63-55 deficit into a 72-63 lead. And it felt like this. Rob Wright, 20 points, 5 assists in the second half. Norchad Omier, 17 points, 11 rebounds in the second half. This kind of an ass kicking is not what you expect to see out of a Bill Self's team. And we could talk about the tactical stuff. And I do think that Mike had a lot of good points, but I think that there's some bigger concerns beyond just, hey, I don't know if it's a perfect fit with KJ next to Hunter Dickinson for this Kansas group.
Hey, also, Baylor did not have Jeremy Roach or Langston Love. So they were basically down to like 6.5
Or Edgecombe.
And VJ Edgecombe sprained his ankle with 8 minutes left.
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, you're talking about a team, and the best player on the floor was clearly a freshman from Baylor named Rob Wright. When Kansas had three dudes, as you said, I mean, three of the most experienced players in the entire country. That is why Bill Self rolls with Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris. And Zeke Mayo. There's something missing here, guys. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. I thought it was still fit and the pieces not fitting together. I think it's more than that. And again, I can't really put my finger on exactly what it is, but just watching this develop over the last couple of weeks, and really they haven't beaten anybody of note in a while here. But that game against Houston, a good veteran team puts that game away multiple times, and they never did. And then Central Florida, they struggle. They kind of get away with one there. And then today to take your foot off the gas and let an undermanned Baylor team that really hadn't done a whole lot this year come out and score 60 on you? 60 when you're supposed to have, again, DeJuan Harris is supposed to be an elite defender. KJ Adams is supposed to be an elite defender. Like, there's no way you're allowing Baylor to score 60 without VJ Edgecombe, without Jeremy Roach, without Langston Love. Like, it's embarrassing. In the AJ Storr thing, guys, I still don't get it. I can't believe Bill Self hasn't found a way to get this guy to be productive. It's February 1st.
Well,
February 1st.
The AJ Storr thing makes sense to me because he's just a guy that defaults to being and I'm not trying to denigrate the kid, but he's a selfish basketball player in the sense that he's out there to score. And when Bill is asking him to get out there and run offense and run sets, like when it doesn't work, what he defaults to is, all right, I got to go get a shot up, and it ends up being a bad shot.
June.
It just has not
hold on.
clicked.
June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. 8 months. 8 months. We thought Bill Self, a Hall of Fame coach, arguably the best coach right now in the game, could figure out a way to get AJ Storr to be semi-productive by now, by February 1st, didn't we?
Hey, how long has Field of 68 been around? 4 years? For 4 years, we've been trying to get Jeff Goodman to not interrupt people on the show, and it hasn't worked. So maybe, just maybe, you can provide some advice to Bill Self on how to be able to deal with this. I think part of it is a lack of leadership, and it feels very weird for me to be saying this, Mike. You got DeJuan Harris, who is the best winner in college basketball right now, right? At the point, you have Hunter Dickinson, who is a fifth-year senior that has been in the public eye, like a centerpiece of college basketball for 5 years. You have KJ Adams, who is as experienced as anybody in the sport. And it just feels like when it starts spinning and when it starts going down, there's nobody that just can say, okay, I'm going to go solve this problem. I'm going to go win us this game. They don't have any of those dudes. They don't have guys that like the way that I like to phrase it is, there's certain teams and certain players where they expect to win, and they just know we're going to find a way to make this work. And it feels like watching this Kansas team, especially right now, when it starts going bad, they're just sitting there saying, oh man, how are we going to fuck this thing up? What are we going to do to be able to make this thing cost us a win? And it just feels like I don't know if it's a head thing. I don't know if it's a leadership thing, but that's kind of where I'm at with this Kansas team right now.
Yeah, and I think you saw across college basketball tonight, there are teams in college basketball that can fight through things, right? That can be resilient. I mean, we saw Texas Tech tonight. I mean, how much adversity do you want? And they went into the Fertitta Center and were able to get that win. So it's just maybe it's a killer instinct thing. But the other thing that I talked about with Kansas earlier in the season is the hallmark of Kansas basketball a lot of times it's been big physical wings. It's been Jalen Wilson, Agbaji, it's Christian Brown, it's Wayne Selden, it's speed. Like they don't have any of that. They've got like the wings that they have, and I'm saying this as a thin guy myself, they're thin and not as physically imposing. So they've actually found a way to be a really solid defense despite that. But there's times where I just think teams can just say, hey, we're putting Robert Wright just said, I'm putting my head down, getting in the paint. I don't care. Mm-hmm. And there was really just no resistance. So that is a concerning part. Like if you look at maybe like the mental makeup of it, because they probably close out that game against Houston but like once that happens too, there is you have to fight the oh shit, is this happening again thing. Because that's a real thing that can seep in. And then the point that you made about AJ Storr too, I mean, there were tells with Wisconsin. I mean, there were a lot of games he didn't close for Wisconsin. Like he didn't.
No, you're right.
He would sit on the bench in closing time. So, I mean, that's one of the things where like if you look at a coach, and a lot of times Bill Self showed it today, I will play the players I trust the most. And right now there's not that trust factor with those guys.
Yep. All right. Goodman.